the left side of the heart, the left ventricle, is a really large muscle, and actually because of the trabeculae carni, basically when it relaxes or when it collapses, it doesn't collapse all the way. There's always a little bit of free space left in there. But the right side, the right ventricle, is a very puny muscle by comparison. And so normally, in most of these hearts, there is another little band that is present, and you can see it, and it varies tremendously from one specimen to another. But you see this band, and it's totally separate. I just put my thumb under it there. You see that? Looks like a rubber band that's in between there. It goes from the outer wall to the median, to the septum there, interventricular septum. And this band is called a moderator band because when this contracts, this actually also contracts and acts like a little strut to keep this ventricle from totally collapsing. So, So you see it right here?
Yeah.
So what that does, what that does is that actually contracts at the same time. It turns into a solid strut that keeps this from totally collapsing, so that you don't get any kind of blood in there after by passive flow when this relaxes. So it keeps a little bit of opening there, so you don't get the whole thing collapsing, and then you can't get anything going in.
So only in that ventricle?
It's only in this side because this is such a weak muscle.
That's the
Right.
It's the right side. Right side. The moderator band is on the right side only. Okay. And again, some of these, the specimens vary tremendously in terms of whether or not they have them. That may have something to do with, genetics of the pigs. So like this one, here's another one. This is really bizarre. You saw how thick that one was. This one looks like a little strand. They're the same thing.
Really?
That's the same thing right there.
Same thing?
Yeah, bizarre. Just totally bizarre. Okay? So a lot of variability.
That heart looks a little bit smaller too.
Yeah.
Oh
look-
my goodness.
No, not even, the comparison, this is
I
like
don't
10% or 1% of the size of the other one.
Right.
And if you look at it, it goes from the same general area, okay? So the moderator band is unique, and it helps keep the right ventricle from 100% collapse. The trabeculae carni play the same role on the left side. Because of their large rod-like structures, they create little interstices in the left ventricle, which prevent it from total collapse during systole. Okay.
Fossa ovalis.
Oh, yes, and I thought I saw a good one. Now, also, just like we said, between the aorta and the pulmonary trunk, there was in fetal development, there's a shunt that goes between them. And there's also a shunt between the two atria, okay? And I'm going to see if I can find it. I had one that was cut just right, and you can feel it. So basically, they call it the fossa ovale, and in embryonic development, it's an actual opening called the foramen ovale, because during embryonic development, obviously you don't need blood going to the right side of the heart, so everything comes into the left to be pumped out to the body, and so anything going to the right is shunted across to the left. And because all the oxygenation is coming from the mother, okay? And normally what that means is, if we have a good dissection, that you can actually find the narrowing, because when it closes, which is right around birth, I can't feel it on this one, it actually, the opening closes and you get a thinning of the muscle mass between the ventricles, or the atria. And you can actually, palpate that and feel where it is, except that I didn't get the one that has a good dissection. All right, there you go. No, that's not it. So the normal right in here, this is too small. So you may or may not find it. This will get a better dissection. Yeah, so if you have they call it a patent foramen ovale, it means it's open. And so that typically is something that is dealt with where they have crossover and they deal with it in the first couple of years of life if it doesn't close on its own. Okay? And who was it? There was a I think it was Ariel Sharon. Anybody know your Israeli history? Heard of Ariel Sharon? He was their prime minister. He went in, this is 4 years ago now, he went into one of their major hospitals. Obviously, he was in his 70s or whatever, heavily overweight, had some heart problems. But he had a patent foramen ovale, and they were going to actually close it by surgery. And of course, when he was on the table, he had a stroke.
Oh.
And that was the last anybody ever heard of him. I mean, you know, for reasons that are only known to the Israelis. But that was a kind of a problem. So I guess I don't have the perfect one for this.
So if it didn't close at birth and it,
Well, what would happen is if it doesn't close at birth, then basically whenever there's any significant physical exertion, then there's going to be crossover between the right and left side, so the child isn't going to get enough oxygen in their blood.
One of
Well,
my
I mean-
nieces had that and had surgery like in Portland when she was
Yeah.
like 2 weeks old. Or something.
Yeah,
They
I
figured
have
it
A lot
out.
a friend
I
that
think a
their
lot of times
child's like that.
a lot of times it depends on how bad they think it is. If it's real severe, because so what happens is this. Normally, what this, it's not like a big hole, okay? It's actually two flaps that overlap like this. And so in the fetus, basically the blood gets pushed through from one side to the other, okay? But at birth, these things stick together and then very quickly fuse, and that closes it. But if it's actual opening like that, then there's no chance of closure. And so then they'll undergo surgical options in order to correct that.
well, with that guy that you're talking about,